Alright, Cold Dot Elementalist build overview. So this is a Cold Dot spell build. It's stacking life and it's also stacking cold resistance to scale both the damage and defense. Basically done through Foulborn Perfect Form, Foulborn Wrath Pith, and the Cold Mastery that gives you cold damage over time multiplier for overcapped cold res. So cold spells in general aren't like very strong at the moment. They're pretty weak. But there's enough good items this league that you can make it playable, and it feels pretty good. It takes a bit more investment than other builds would because your starting point's a bit lower. So this was a decently expensive character to get rolling at like probably current prices, maybe 80 to even 100 div to get really up there for doing like juice T16s. My current character I had invested about 200 or so in. I haven't touched the gear in a few days though. I don't know exact prices, could be a bit cheaper now. But the build does feel very good overall if you're a fan of the cold dot playstyle of just, dropping a bunch of ground degens and letting them do their thing. I don't have Wintertide brand on this, but I did have it in the original plan, and you can sub it in if you wanted to. You just need to fix up some points. At this point of this tree, it's kind of tough because I grabbed a second cluster jewel, but maybe I'd have to drop that, but you need the brand nodes. But overall, the damage and stuff is good enough that Wintertide didn't feel necessary, and playing just Vortex, Cold Snap, Creeping Frost is a lot comfier, a lot easier to do. So, just been sticking with that one. Damage is solid. Defenses are not actually that amazing, despite having a huge health pool and stuff. The life stacking doesn't actually give that much great defense value because you kind of lack a lot of mitigation. But the defense is good enough with just a big health pool and a ton of life regen. So I'm going to do a quick map. I've got just a random T17, a fortress with some damage and some defense mods to kind of show things off. And then an atlas with some map mod effect. Nothing too crazy, just kind of show it in action. And then after that I will go over the gear and the passives and all that good stuff. So mapping, why I think Vortex is really nice and comfy is you don't really have to aim. Like I just walk around. I don't bother like aiming to mobs. I'm just aiming where I'm going. Just press dots. And in a map like this, it's kind of indoor corridor, which a lot of the T17s end up being. It's particularly nice because they're very narrow, so you have your dot covering like the entire width of these hallways. Yeah, so I have Vortex. I have a Vault Cold Snap that also does a lot, so when this is up, I can kind of shield charge through most mobs like that. I'm not going to bother doing a breach. You'll notice there's a lot of proximity shield mobs here because I put on the Cloister Divination Scarabs, which adds these stack deck dropping mobs, which is where all those are coming from, but also they can be annoying sometimes because of their proximity shields, but since we are damage over time, we get to completely ignore that. Very good. And we'll see how the boss goes. The one weakness of the defense of this build is that really big high DPS stuff can kind of get you, and something like that would include really juiced up T17 bosses. This one isn't too juiced up, so I'm not too worried, but that is where the defense can start to feel a little lackluster. And then you can see this map did have a bunch of extra resistances on it, so it's going to take a minute here. Whereas the default boss would be dead in probably like 5 seconds or so. But it's plenty capable of doing it, especially for like a soft core character setup. But if you're in hardcore, the one thing I would be very particularly worried about is doing juiced tier 17 content, specifically kind of because the boss is not necessarily on this map, because the fortress boss is pretty predictable and easy to dodge. But some of the more hectic ones, like, that is where I would be worried about it. Trash is pretty easy. I have life on kill from a cluster jewel notable, as long as the enemies are chilled, which in combination with like the regen giant health pool, as long as you're killing things and you're kind of just always killing things because you're leaving lingering damage everywhere, like super durable in actual map clear. But yeah, that's enough of the map, so gives you an idea. It's just a nice little, easy to play, not the fastest or anything, but easy to play style. And now I will go over all of the gear. So again, first two things I showed earlier was this Foulborn Perfect Form. This gives two things: evasion per 10 player life, and it also gives Ghost Dance, which is getting you ES back when you get hit based on your evasion. But then by default, perfect form also gives you 50 spell suppression, which is an insane number, and gives you increased evasion for overcapped cold resistance, and then some minus cold res. And these are super common, really easy to get them to double corrupt. I was looking for +2, either AoE or duration, but the best I got was a +1 socketed, which is a little bit weaker, but still really good. Then the Felborn Wrath Pith, you're basically just getting double the value, because now you're getting 5% spell damage and 5% damage over time for 100 player life. So now your life is giving you increased damage here, life is giving you flat evasion here, your cold res is giving you increased evasion here, and then your cold res is also giving you full dot multi from the mastery. And so I don't really have any evasion on my tree at all. No grace, no anything else. Pretty much just from the few random bases and then the life stacking and cold rest stacking. And this character is currently sitting at 63,000 evasion without any flasks on, which is pretty crazy for having, again, nothing on your tree, no auras or anything. Like, it's a lot of evasion. And then other than that, I also have a Falborn Tollborn, which ends up being essentially better than any rare weapon you can get because it just gives a bunch of plus level. Normally on a rare, you get a lot of increased damage, you get a lot of dot multi, but we already have that covered because our shield is giving us a ton of increased damage and the mastery is giving us a lot of dot multi. So the +4 and then the extra -12 res on this is really nice. I have mine also corrupted for some plus AoE. Other than that, just a bunch of rares. Pretty simple stuff on most of them. So boots, gloves, helmet, we're getting some suppression on each. The boots, you want ailment avoidance, and then one thing you're going to see on every single item is cold res, because again, we're stacking cold res. So the boots have suppression cold res, and then also ailment avoidance, which is from Essence mod. The gloves have cold res suppression, and then also have dexterity, and then the helmet has cold res suppression, and then also chaos res. So these two could switch around, like between gloves and helmet. One needs chaos res and one needs dex. Doesn't really matter which is where. And then otherwise, you just kind of want as much life as you can manage to hit on your prefixes. The belt is pretty basic life belt with Hunter influence. Mine's only got a tier 2 life roll. Obviously, it could be higher. And then cold res, chaos res with an open suffix, which is actually pretty big, to craft strength plus dex, which is part of getting our dexterity requirement up. This is like one of the trickiest things of this character. We're on the entire left side of the tree. We're getting 0 dex on our tree almost, just by default. So we have to work on a lot because the chest needs 197. But then also the strength plays into the rational doctrine unique jewel to make the strength higher than int, which I'll show when I go over the tree. But otherwise then, it's a pretty basic belt. Both my rings are synthesized rings. Really neither of them need to be, but I will say Arcane Surge is pretty nice. If you are, at least on softcore trade, these are like dirt cheap as a base, and then having Arcane Surge on hit lets you use the Arcane Surge support, which is just a pretty solid support, 35% more damage. But also having the Arcane Surge gives you a little bit of cast speed for free, so it's nice. It's not needed. Like, you could swap Arcane Surge support out for Cruelty or Hypothermia, and I think Cruelty is better if you're getting max Cruelty effect, otherwise it's a little bit worse. Hypothermia is just a little bit worse always. But you could swap that out and just have whatever rings, Vermilion rings, or even heist bases are actually pretty good because we don't need prefixes on these really. Other than life, like there's not actually any prefixes that are needed. But so the heist ring bases that give you extra suffixes, if you wanted to go even crazier on like scaling this, would be a good potential option. But aside from that, what the rings have, again, cold res on everything. One ring has dex, just that's part of filling out our dex requirements, and then this one has cast speed. The other one has chaos res and cast speed. Now, either of these cast speed rolls could, in theory, be replaced by dot multi from Essence of, I think, Delirium. I didn't end up making any. It makes it a lot more expensive to craft, but it would technically be more DPS. Cast speed's just kind of nice quality of life stat for us, and I feel like the damage is high enough. And then on the amulet, I'm currently using a focused amulet with life and plus cold skills, and then cold res. So I have crafted cold res. Ideally, it would just be this, but not with crafted cold res and a proper cold res roll. So instead of 56 there, it would say like 90 or something. But this one's fine enough. I just haven't bothered trying to do the gamble to get the proper cold res roll. But prior to this, focused amulet, I just had, I think it's this one, just a really, really basic amulet with life and a bunch of dex, which this helped a lot of the dexterity requirements before I had the other things sorted out. So that was really nice, and then it's also got some cold res, because of course it does. But the focused amulet kind of went hand in hand with adding a second cluster jewel on the character, and I used this one to have an all attributes roll. So this is getting, you know, 4 all attributes, could be 5 if I had the tier 1 effect or tier 1 roll on it, but that gets a lot of that stat stuff as well. Kind of needed that in order to get the stats to drop my giant dexterity amulet for the focused amulet. So that's all the gear. Quickly go through the gems. In the chest, we're doing basically a double 6-link thing where I have both Vortex and the Cold Snap, Vol Cold Snap, which takes up the entire screen when you mouse over it. So these are both getting 5-linked, and they have Awaken Swift Affliction, Arcane Surge, Control Destruction, Ele Focus. Just those are the big damage setups. And then Gloves has the utility DoT, which is Creeping Frost, and it's linked to Bone Chill, Control Destruction, and then Unbound Ailments. So this makes the chill and the shock, because we're elemental, so we have guaranteed shock from this Creeping Frost, just a lot stronger. So it does some damage on its own, but it's mostly there to get the amped up chill and then the bone chill effect from that chill, as well as the amped up shock. Helmet's got shield charge with faster attacks, and then also a flame golem vitality. Boots has the rest of the golems here: lightning golem, chaos golem, stone golem with meat shield. Shield's got a capsule damage taken immortal call with just flame dash, and then the wand has our eternal blessing malevolence. That's our one free eternal blessing aura, which actually apparently wasn't turned on for that whole map, so I was missing some damage. Whoops. And then frostbite curse. And yeah, flasks. Oriath's End's actually pretty great. I've been liking it a lot. Helps with the clear a bit. Other than that, I've got like a Quicksilver, Sapphire. I put on a Soul Catcher because I didn't really need anything else in particular here, and it does give 10% reduced soul gain prevention, so I can very slightly use Vol Cold Snap more often. But it also gives phasing, which is just nice to have. And then I have the Wine of the Prophet, which really this build doesn't value that much. It's still just a fun item, and I had one already. If I didn't already have one, I probably wouldn't have bothered purchasing one. I could have used like an Onslaught flask maybe, and then not had Onslaught on boots, or I don't know what else really. Alternatively, you can also use Forbidden Taste, which is essentially a full heal life flask, and then it puts a DoT on you, whatever. But since we have such a high health pool, like regular life flasks don't help out much, but you can put this on, and if you actually get hit really hard, you can just pop that for a full heal, which I will put on if I do like Uber bosses or something. But otherwise, I kind of just let it sit there in the stash. But that's the gear. Do have the grafts as well, so they're kind of in a weird spot. It doesn't get as much value from grafts as other builds, but then at the same time, it kind of does in different ways. So we're using this freezing toll graft. This basically is just because it has apply frost on hit as an effect, and it spams these crystals pretty often. So it's really good at applying the covered in frost debuff, which is 20% increased damage taken. The graft itself does some amount of damage. I don't think it's that much compared to how much we're doing on our own at this point. And it does also give a percent cold damage as a prefix mod, but again, we have so much percent damage from the shield that it doesn't matter that much. And then this other one is actually just has the Tender Embrace skill. Don't really care about that skill at all. It is fine. When you hit low life, you get a little burst of extra life recovery, which is nice. It's not nothing. But the main reason that I have this is actually just the percent life prefix, and then I got a corrupted one. So the corruption is 1% chance to take 20% less area damage from hits per 2% overcapped cold res. We are so far overcapped on our cold res that this is actually giving us 100% chance to take 20% less area damage from hits. So the corruption here is just giving us 20% less area damage taken from hits, which is really insane. And it's also why this one, I bought this one that already had the corruption. But like, so it doesn't even have a fourth mod, but a fourth mod would just be something affecting the graph skill, and we don't even really care about it anyway. It was mostly, again, just for the life and for the corruption implicit, because the corruption implicit is really strong. And then onto the passive tree. I'm actually going to crack open the POB here to do the passive tree. It's a little bit easier. There we go. So, Elementalist. No Bloodlines Ascendancies, just because Elementalist is really good and has enough really good nodes. Shock Golems, extra minus res, and Convergence. So it's what's really good about these is it's actually a lot of stats that help with the fact that we are already getting a crazy amount of increased damage and a crazy amount of damage over time multi. If I go to like the vortex in here, you can see that the Foulborn Wrathpith is giving, 1200% damage or something. Some ridiculous number. And then our dot multi is, I forget where it is in here exactly. It's in the neighborhood of like 200 dot multi, I think. Oh, it's down here. Yeah. 90, we're getting 92 dot multi from the mastery. But so what Elementalist ends up giving is increased damage taken from shock, minus res from exposure, and then just straight up more damage from Heart of Destruction. So like those all just, they multiply nicely with it. But other than that, we're life stacking, so we kind of want to get down where there's a lot of life nodes quickly. But before that, have to kind of go up top here. This is the best spot to just get the cold mastery. That's like mainly the only reason to go up here. But we do also get the golem nodes while we're up there, so it's not a complete waste otherwise. And then go down, rush down through Templar. I have a Glorious Vanity here, which is giving the Corrupted Soul Keystone. That's where we're getting our big chunk of energy shield from, which we don't have a ton of ES regen or sustain outside of the Ghost Shrouds, but since we have so much evasion, it is nice to have a big enough ES buffer that, the Ghost Shrouds are able to do their full work. And then I've got mine hitting 3 solid notables here. A couple skill effect duration, damage over times, and then a life one was really nice. And then out left the first big cluster jewel, 2 of these 12 passive clusters. So this one is giving all res, and then cast speed for cold skills. I think mine's like a couple tier 2 mods, not full tier 1, but basically we need the all res roll here, and then both of these you're going to want the max life because we're stacking life, and flat life is a harder to come by source of it for us, so these cluster jewels do a lot of that for us. And then inside this I have one medium cluster, which gives some pretty good stats. This is where we get the life on kill from one of the notables, 2% life on kill and killing a chilled enemy. Alternatively, if you don't want to rely on chilled enemies, because if you have 100% ailment avoidance maps, you can't get your life on kill anymore, and it is noticeable if you're doing like really juiced maps without life on kill versus with life on kill. There is a basically identical notable that just gives generic 1% life on kill on any enemy, so you could get that one instead if you wanted it. And then the other one's just life and damage over time. Rare jewels, there's a couple of them. It's pretty much just life, dot multi, whatever. Again, we already have so many of those stats, but there's not much else you can get on rares. I have Forbidden Flesh, Forbidden Flame in here. I don't know where the other one is, but they're doing Frigid Wake, which is the occultist node. Gives a 15% more cold damage multiplier, and also gives enemies dealing 10% reduced damage with hits. Pretty good value for both offense, defense. Watcher's Eye with Malevolence dot multi and Vitality life recovery rate. If I had to pick between one of the two, I would probably honestly go with the Vitality life recovery first. It's a lot cheaper than just getting the dot multi. The dot multi by itself costs a lot, but having both of them is pretty nice. But the life recovery, especially if you're getting started, you need to be able to heavily over sustain for the Wrathpith 10% sacrifice when you're casting. That's why we have so much life regen on the build. And then going down from here, there's a Foulborn Red Dream. This gives max life based on fire res within its reach, and we're turning all the strength nodes into fire res nodes, which basically turns them into small life nodes. Grabbing the res stuff right over here as well, and then going into the Marauder one. There's a couple here that are lit up as tattoos, but we're not actually specking those. That was a previous repathing that I switched out. Blood Magic, we don't want to spend mana, we're not reserving anything. Gives 10% more max life. And then finally down to the second cluster jewel, which again, this one's giving all attributes, which is helping with our dexterity requirements. And again, some all res, but no cap speed on this one. And then the life once again. And then here we have the other Forbidden Flesh and the other rare jewel. So up here should be there's a Foulborn Ancestral Vision, which can be just a regular one to start, but getting the Foulborn helps get the full suppression cap, and then gives our full ailment immunity along with the boots. And up here is the Rational Doctrine. So going back to that belt where it had the strength and dex, we want our strength to be our highest stat, because we want the consecrated ground because it gives a giant chunk of extra life regen. If you ended up in a situation where like your dex was high enough, your strength and int are all high enough, but your int is just higher than your strength, the lowest your int can be is 212. Is that the right number? Yeah. So it can't go much lower. But let's say you had like 220 strength, but somehow you had extra int. You just tattoo away some int to get it back down below because you really want that life regen from the rational doctrine. But yeah, that covers the whole tree, and I think that covers the whole character. So yeah, that's the build. It's good stuff. If you are looking for a cold dot because you want to play cold dot and you like playing cold dot, can recommend. If you're looking for a strong build that's going to give you great bang for your buck, in general, do not recommend. Again, Cold Dot is not that strong. We are forcing it to be strong by putting a bit more currency into it than what other builds would need to get similar or even better levels of performance. But it does work once you get it scaled up, and it does feel really good once you get it there. Yeah, good build. But that's all I got. Thanks for watching. See ya.